Hi everyone, welcome. My name is Nikki Wetzel. I am the Director of Communications and Advancement here at Prosperity Connection. Prosperity Connection is a local St. Louis nonprofit. Through our financial education and coaching, we help St. Louisans build confidence, knowledge, and skills to reach their financial goals and achieve financial wellness. And we are super excited about today's conversation. Money mastery, budgeting like a pro. So we know that we teach a class on how to build a budget, and that is wonderful and helpful. But we thought it might be great to actually sit down with two of the pros and talk through their actual budgeting process, how they use budgeting to benefit themselves and their families, and success they've seen with budgeting, so that you can actually see it play out in real life. So I'm super pumped for today's conversation. Just want to remind y'all, if you've been here before, just like last time, if you have a question, please pop it into the chat. I have a great list of questions here we're going to start with, but we want to make sure that we're being helpful to you and help answer your questions. So, like I said, pop them in the chat. We will get to them. Before we dive in, Robert, Veronica, if you want to take a quick second to introduce yourselves.
Absolutely. What's going on, everybody? I'm Robert Nelson. I'm the director of coaching here at St. Ooh, Lord. I don't know where I was about to say. I was about to say here in St. Louis, and I don't even work for the city of St. Louis, but I'm sorry. I'm director of coaching here at Prosperity Connection.
Hi everyone, my name is Veronica Guerrero and I am the bilingual financial coach here at Prosperity Connection.
Awesome. All right, y'all, let's dive in and get started. So let's talk budget right off the bat and process. Why don't you each take a minute to walk us through what your actual budgeting process looks like? If you have a specific model like 50-30-20 or envelope, if you have a specific method, spreadsheet, app, what does budgeting look like for Robert? What does budgeting look like for Veronica?
Perfect. So you want me to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay, so I started off with the envelope system.
Okay.
And then I graduated that into a budget binder. Budget binder is like something you can find on Amazon. They're anywhere from $8 to $16. And it's a little booklet that lets you write out your budget. And each booklet has individual slots with different categories
Okay.
that you can put money in. So for example, they'll have one for food, one for gas, one for your pet, your child. You can label them however you want. I was using that for a couple of years. And then eventually I graduated that to actual bank accounts. I went to a bank that offered free checking accounts.
Oh, nice.
And then I did multiple checking accounts. And then each one had a category. So now when I get paid direct deposit, each account gets filled accordingly.
Nice.
I have a card just for spending. I'll withdraw some cash still and then organize that as well. But so far, that's what I started with, is just organizing my money, making sure I had a category for everything, and estimate how much I need per category.
Great.
My strategy is fairly close to Veronica's. But I do more of a hybrid with mine. So I do pen and paper. I'm old school. Don't worry, Smokey the Bird. I save trees. I use an iPad. But outside of pen and paper, I also do sort of envelopes. But I don't like the binders or envelopes because they're so bulky to me. So I use paper clips and sticky notes. So I use those as my categories, and it keeps it nice and compressed for me. And I keep it locked up in a safe, and that's my approach. And the reason I do pen and paper is because in my household, obviously, we have multiple incomes. So being able to manage all the incomes but still keep them in one budget, it's easier to put it on paper. So myself or my wife can know, okay, here's the budget for the month. Here's what you haven't spending. Here's what I haven't spending, and she can see it out on paper. And if she needs to, look at the budget or go, if I need money for groceries, how much do we have set aside for groceries this month? She can go in and look at those numbers herself, and then go to the envelope system and get what she needs to do whatever she needs to do. So a lot of households do it different. Some folks, each person manage their own income. We found it easier to not have more Chiefs than we do Indians. So we made it so that one person manages the finances, then just distributes the budget, and then the other person just follows the budget.
I'll chime in since mine's a little bit different than both of theirs. So I am not a pen and paper person. I don't love cash itself. So my husband and I, we actually use an app. So we sat down, we started with a spreadsheet, and we typed in like all of our expenses and what it actually equaled out to. And if we were comfortable in that category, we left it. If we wanted to set a different target, we kind of talked about what that would look like, and then we plugged those numbers into the app. So the app we use is called Copilot. I believe it's still only for iPhone users. Sorry, Android. But I think they're planning to expand. But right now, I think it's only an iPhone app. And so we just plugged those numbers into the categories on our app. We happen to be comfortable connecting our card. So we basically use one card for all expenses. We connected that card to that app, and it just auto filters. So when we swipe our card at the gas station, it puts it into the gas category. Sometimes there were a little bumps, like it put the wrong thing in the wrong category, but it was super easy to fix, and it's smart. It learns. So once you categorize that expense in the appropriate category, it learns and does that for the future. So for us, that's a lot simpler. We are intuitive enough, and we've been budgeting long enough that we kind of innately follow it. So we just need to open up the app a couple times a month to make sure we're not totally out of alignment in any one specific category or another. So that kind of, I think we've loosely kind of talked about this, but let's just be really, really clear. So this is how we budget. This is our process. But I know a lot of times we hear, how do I even get started? Where do I even start that budgeting process to get to this point? What do you guys think?
So for me, I didn't come from a household where we were taught how to budget. So I had to bump my head a little bit. And it was coming into the financial industry that really showed me like, oh man, you really don't have your things together like you think you do. And that brought me to trying to budget. And how I tried in the beginning was how I assumed other folks did it. It was like, oh, I will pay my bills loosely. And then I would try to save money, but I end up spending the money I saved. So my beginning steps was me bumping my head a lot, trying different methods. What worked for me was building up the habit of saving. That's what really helped me start to stick to my budget. And the way I built that habit was by starting small. So I thought in order to save, I needed to save $150 a month, $300 a month. What that resulted in was me running to my savings, transferring money to my check until it was gone.
Ooh,
So the
yes.
biggest thing that helped me was I started saving $25 a pay period. And once I had enough discipline to leave that $25 there every pay period, then I would increase that amount. If I got a new job or my income increased, then I would slowly increase that amount. And I ended up having to set up barriers for myself. And we'll talk about that a little later in some of the other questions. But that was some of my beginning stages of
Nice.
learning how to budget. So just understanding what your expenses are, and then starting small. Like if you didn't come from a household that taught you that, or you don't already, some people just are instilled with that discipline. If you don't have that discipline, don't try to shoot for the stars in the beginning. Just start small to build up those discipline and small habits.
Yep. Before you answer, Veronica, just a real quick reminder to those watching, if you have a question, good afternoon, Bernadette. So glad you could join us. If you have a question, please pop it in the chat and we'll make sure we get to that. All right, Veronica, how did you start budgeting?
Okay, so how I started budgeting was basically I was up at 1 a.m. and just in wreck, like I couldn't pay my bills, everything was upside down. So I went on Google and I was like, there's got to be a way out of this. I ended up finding Dave Ramsey and other financial gurus, I guess you can say online. Not everybody's healthy, but the good thing is that they had advice of how to start a budget.
Okay.
So sometimes a budget could be intimidating.
Yeah.
So if you watch someone online that does it for free, that could be very helpful. One tip that they gave was to completely separate your bills from your spending money. So that's the first step I took. I calculated how much do I have to pay in bills every month and include rent. And I was like, okay, that's $1,000. I got to make sure I have an account that has 1,000 or more in it every month, so my bills get paid automatically and they don't bounce back. So first thing I did was got an account just for my bills. And then I got another account for my spending.
Okay.
And then I got a third account for my savings. So what that did was separate my bills from my spending, so I didn't accidentally go out one night and swipe the light bill.
Yeah.
So that was really good for me. And after that, when I knew the house, the four walls were taken care of, I had less anxiety, and then I focused on my spending. So my spending was like, okay, this $400 a month is not stretching out. I was always coming short and unfortunately tapping into my savings. So I had to really go ahead and start doing the cash with my spending, pull it out and give it categories. There was a lot of hiccups along the way, like Robert says, but the good thing is that it took me anywhere from 60 to 90 days of trial and error. But if you keep it up, you keep it organized, you will get to the point where it flows naturally. But like I said, make sure the lights are paid, the rent is paid, and separating that from your spending is the first step of like lowering the anxiety of budgeting.
Yes.
And that would help. That helped me a lot.
That's awesome.
I'm like you said. When I'm not this
Go out and worry about rent later.
the advice of the world.
This in my answer, but just real quick from my perspective, I actually didn't start budgeting until I got my first job here at Prosperity Connection. So I actually started as a financial coach before transitioning into this position. And I realized very quickly, I should probably be doing the things that I'm talking about. So I followed our process that we teach in our traditional budgeting class. I printed off the last 3 months of our bank and credit card statements, and I started highlighting it into categories. And then that is what I put into that spreadsheet. And then my husband and I had a really honest conversation about, wow, our Amazon spending is absurd every month. What should our target be? Or, hey, dining out's a little much. Let's maybe increase groceries and decrease dining out. So we just had a really honest conversation about what was important to us, what we wanted that target to be. And then once we found those numbers, like I said earlier, that's what we plugged into our app. So I literally followed Prosperity Connection process of building the budget, which you'll get to learn about in our class that's starting again in September. I believe Thursday, September 7th, we're back with our classes, and our very first one is creating your spending plan. So that's actually going to walk you through our process, how to start and how to create it and how to set goals that your budget can help you fulfill, which leads us to the next set of questions. Let's talk about the correlation between goals and budgeting. So how do you use your budget to reach your goals? Do you have an example, a success, whether from your own life or maybe even from a client's?
Oh, sure. So for me, I try to first map out my goals. Think about your goals as the rudder on the boat, and then your money is what's the gas using it to get there. So you got to have somewhere to go, some direction with your finances, and that's what goals play. So it's good to have process in place, which is what we talked about in the previous question. But goals is what's going to help drive that process where you want to go.
Yep.
So for myself, when I started this budget journey, my biggest goal was just to be able to not depend on my parents and grandparents. I remember I had a friend, and this is kind of what opened my eyes to I needed a budget. I had a friend who her transmission went out, and I was talking to her, and I was like, "Oh my God, what are you gonna do?" Like, and she was going through some other rough patches, and she was like, "I'm just gonna have to get a new transmission." I'm like,
Just
like,
get a new
it's like
transmission.
6,000, 7,000. I'm like, where are you gonna get that kind of money from? And she's like, "I was gonna take it from my savings." I'm like, how much do you have in your savings? And that opened my eyes because in that moment I was still paying on my car. And I remember sitting in the car and I told myself, if your transmission went out right now, dude, you're screwed. And so my immediate goal was you need to have a saving, some money set aside to be able to help you so you don't have to depend on your parents and grandparents. Then they time I'm still heavily dependent on them. Grandma, can I get $20 for gas? So I wanted to make sure that stopped. After achieving the goal of saving, then I kind of had some financial confidence, which you will get after so long of working with your finances. And then I wanted to experience different things in life. So I wanted home ownership. I wanted to increase my credit score. I wanted to start a business, and so I started to align my goals. Like, well, let's focus on home ownership first because I don't want to start a business and it flopped. Now I can't buy a house. So I made sure, well, let's get a house first. Once we secure a house, I will always make sure my mortgage get paid. So as long as I got the house, everything else can flop. I can continue to open a business or like keep trying. I'm gonna make sure I reach success, but there's no way I'm not gonna have somewhere to live. And so I just began to align my goals in that manner. So those were some of my immediate goals that I initially set up, and I encourage you just set your goals and rank them from easiest or your moderate to long term, and you just set them up for yourself. And if you need help, reach out to one of our financial coaches. That's what they do all day.
Speaking of financial coach, Veronica, how does your budget help you achieve your goal?
So the way my budget helps me achieve my goals is like Robert said, gotta put the gas in the, what'd you say, the little rudder. So,
Robert's the king of metaphors.
right,
We're just trying to keep up here.
exactly. So basically, like if I have a vacation plan this year, I make sure in my budget, I calculate how much the vacation is and how much I'm gonna spend. And then I measure how much do I monthly have to save in order to get that. And I put that into my budget. And then I go ahead and start saving accordingly. So if I want to go out on the weekend, but it turns out that, I have this goal, I remind myself, okay, I really want this vacation. I really want to enjoy this time with my son. The girls can wait another weekend,
I put some on hold.
Like wait another weekend. But that's how my budget helps
Yep.
me with my goals. Another tip I have is I put sticky notes everywhere. So like I'll go to my fridge and get a snack and there's a sticky note of my goal. And it reminds me there'll be something like in my bathroom. I tell my mom, which God bless her soul, she's great, but she's good at like always asking me like, hey, so have you hit this yet? So having that accountability, maybe in a friend or someone, a mentor, a family member, that constant reminder that no, I haven't, but I'm on my way, is really good. And also like giving yourself a pat in the back, even if it's like 20, 50 bucks you put away, giving that self like, hey, you're doing it, you're getting there, rewarding yourself along the way is really helpful. But definitely that's how I use my budget. I make sure I calculate what my goal is, and then I increase that or decrease that according to my budget.
Yep. I do pretty much the exact same thing you do. And one of our biggest goals is always vacations. So we divide it out. We decide how much each month needs to go in. And we actually set it up so that happens automatically. I know that can make a lot of people really nervous, but that is something that we have grown to be comfortable with. So our savings, actually, I have a big chunk of my paycheck even just automatically deposited into a savings account. It doesn't even land in our checking account. So that was a big game changer for us, was changing those auto deposits and auto transfers. I love your Post-it idea. When I was a coach, I encouraged people to do that. You could make a fun little graphic on Canva and make it your phone background or your laptop background to remind yourself of that goal. One of the other things I've seen that I really like is if you find, you could do it with a plain piece of paper or a Post-it, but they actually make blank white credit card sleeves. I saw that some people, like, if you're artistically inclined, which I am not, you could draw like a picture of your goal or even just write your goal on that credit card sleeve and put that card you swipe the most often in there. And so then every time you pull that card out to swipe, you are confronted with and reminded of your goal. And we're not here to shame you into not going out with the girls ever, or not having that margarita. Like, just to give yourself that pause to think about your goal versus the immediate need. And if you still want that margarita, then get the margarita. Like, it's okay. You don't have to give up everything fun in life to reach your goals.
Yes.
The margarita thing and the drinks and the going out with the girls made me think of this next question. So, are there any things that you all find really throw off your budget, or that hump that you've had to go over that now you've conquered? What were those budget busters for you at first?
Do you want me to go first?
Go.
Okay. So for mine was basically I had to come up with a category called extra cash because sometimes I would go to the grocery store and it was more than I had budgeted for. And I never had that extra cash category. So I was like, let me take some out of gas. And then gas was low. And then I was like, let me move on to like the pet food and take some
So
out
it's
of
like the
pet
trickle
food.
effect.
Yeah, and I'm just like shuffling money everywhere. When I could have just had this category with an extra 150 bucks to get extra cash for so it wouldn't throw off my budget.
So smart.
When I didn't have it, I would have to tap into savings and I hated that because I wanted to grow my savings, but it would come back down. So I had to implement that extra cash. So it's almost like a buffer. Is that how you say it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Sorry, ESL, but it was like the extra room to like if I went over or under, I would have money to pull out of. And the good news is that if I wouldn't go over, I would just put that cash into savings. So it's not a lose situation. It was a win-win.
Oh, that's so smart.
So for me, I'm gonna give you two because in the beginning, my biggest hurdle was I'm not gonna say not knowing myself, but not facing the truth of myself. I think a lot of cases with budgeting, we kind of do what Nikki said, like we shame our I don't even want to call them habits, but we shame who we are. Like I like to spend money. I shouldn't spend money on these things. I'm gonna try to just keep myself from spending money because I should be saving my money. I shouldn't be spending it on that. In the beginning, I spent so much saying like, oh, I shouldn't even want to buy these things. That cost too much. Why? And I spent so much time trying to fight that aspect of myself when it just took me learning, bro, you're a spender. Let me tell y'all what that means. When I see money, I'm gonna spend it. If you gave me $300 right now, even if I don't have anything to spend it on, I'm gonna find something to spend it on.
Same.
That's my nature, and I had to learn it about myself.
Yep.
Once I learned that, it took away all the guilt and shame of trying to stop it. Just like, well, if I know that's who I am, let me just put up barriers for money I don't want to spend, because I know I'm going to spend it. So instead of saying, I'll just put this in my savings account, I'm not going to touch it because I'm supposed to say that. No, you're a spender. So you're going to transfer that right over. So I had to open up a separate account with no ATM card, no debit card. So now I can't transfer that money out. And that money is truly a savings that I could not touch unless I absolutely need it because I have to physically drive to go get it. And I intentionally picked somewhere that was really far. That was in the beginning. The issue that I was recently faced with, once I've been doing this for a while, is comfortability. So comfortability came with skill. And once I got really good at this, I got to a place like, I know my budget. I'm good. I got this. And when you get to that place, it opens up the door for error. And you might overspend, but because you don't have that diligence to check as often as you did in the beginning, you completely miss that you've been overspending for the past few months. So as of recently, it's been getting to that place of being comfortable where like literally over the past few months, I'm like, I got to start getting back to how I was in the beginning because I done slipped here a few times and I didn't even know it. That was money I could have used and you know, I'm starting to realize where I messed up my own budget just from getting to a place of like, well, now I have a system. The system is working and trying to, y'all remember those old George Foreman commercials with the just set it and forget it. You can't do that with your budget. You can't just set it and forget it. And I would get to a place where I'm like, well, my budget is working, my savings is going up, I'm good. I'm gonna set it and forget it. But you gotta at least check back every so often.
Yep.
And for someone like me, you know, you gotta know yourself. That has to be a little bit more often than what I was doing. So that was my most recent mess up in my budget that kind of just threw me off a little bit.
Yep. I think my husband and I are experiencing a little bit of that right now. We're, you know, thankfully in a place financially where we're super solid and we had the budget and we were kind of doing the just setting and forgetting. And then Prime Day happened and, you know, all that stuff. So just that good reminder to get back on track, open up the app again,
Yeah.
and
I see all the boxes.
yeah, literally all the time. Also, you should see our admins. One last quick reminder: we've got about 5 to 7 minutes left. So I still got a couple questions I'm going to go through. But if you're curious about anything budgeting or money management, please feel free to pop it in the chat. So I skipped over this one a little bit earlier. It's kind of similar to goals, but if you can think of anything else, what are some like long-term benefits you've seen from budgeting? And again, whether that's yourself or client success. I know we've talked about like what goals we've achieved, but have there been any other really long-term benefits you witnessed?
Absolutely. So for myself, I think budgeting made it so those things that I previously felt guilty for, I now changed them to being a reward for my budgeting. So I remember I said I'm a spender. I like to spend. So I would use like trips and places where I can be a spender, but doing that in moderation. So and now because I do that, I get so much more benefit because, and I'm literally just throwing out numbers. I promise I'm not like trying to make this like about bragging or nothing, but like you can literally take a trip to Vegas, blow 4 or 5 thousand in a weekend, come back home, and your bills are paid, your savings is up, nothing changed, and people are like, well, dang, how did you do that? You must do this. You must got a high pay, and it's like, well, I planned for that trip for a year and a half.
Yep.
I saved money. I had to go a year and a half without being able to go anywhere. But when I went somewhere, man, I had a time. So you can overly reward yourself by sticking to your guns and following your process. That's one of the biggest benefits I've seen. And it's funny because it makes people on the outside think that you live a more lavish life than what you do because it's like, well, no, honestly, you probably make more money than I do. The issue is I just planned a little better in that situation.
Yeah. Before you shoot an answer out, Veronica, I did see the question come through. Is anyone using the envelope method? Yes, Veronica started with the envelope method. They actually both kind of use a version of the envelope method. Do you mind like super quick high level review for Bernadette just to highlight how you use the envelope method?
Yeah, Bernadette. Like I said, there's a lot of free YouTube videos online that will teach you how to do an envelope system. So whenever you have downtime, feel free to check those out. But yeah, it's basically write a category for every envelope and just stuff the cash in. Make sure when you get paid, you pull out that cash. A lot of people make this mistake that they'll pull out $400 or $500 and do their envelope system, and they have only 20s. Make sure that you get 1s, 5s, 10s, so you can break your money down.
Ooh, that is so smart.
Yeah.
So when you go to the bank, pick your favorite teller. Bank courtesy is, just right in the back, like I want this many 1s, this many 5s, this many 10s, and it makes it easier on both of them.
And so instead of envelope, I use sticky notes. So same method, but I use sticky notes instead of like envelopes or like the budget binder Veronica said she used. And I do the exact same thing. I break it up into different denominations so I can put them in their respective categories. The biggest thing I will say is just make sure you use that the system doesn't work if you're not using it to monitor. So if you're overspending in the category, by the end of the month, your sticky note or your envelope is empty and you're dabbing in another envelope or sticky note, that is a sign that you are not budgeting for that category correctly or you are not spending how you should in that category. Unfortunately, myself nor a coach cannot tell you which one is the answer because we're not in your daily spending, we don't live your life. So you have to do some soul searching and figure out, well, do I need to change how I use this money or do I need to change how much I budget towards this category?
Always be adaptable. I'll throw in real quick and then we'll have Veronica talk about long-term benefits. I have actually also seen a couple tech-based or app solutions for the envelope method. I know that sounds wild, but I had a couple clients that tested a couple different versions of them. One simple one is called Good Budget, I believe, and that one is an app where you do not have to link your bank account. You just it requires a little bit more discipline than having cash, because you basically just put your cash in the envelopes in the app, and then you have to do the tracking, inputting your transactions and watching that number go down. So that does take a little bit of discipline. I don't want to go into the second one too much because it is very rigid, but if you really hate the idea of physical cash, but you really love the idea of the envelope system, I believe there is an app out there called Cube, and that's Qube. It comes with its own card, and it's, like I said, very strict to really help build that discipline. So if you're interested in the envelope method, but maybe don't want to have actual cash, you might consider a couple digital options.
Veronica's option is what she does is good as well. With the she has, you said you have a bank account with multiple checking accounts.
Yep.
So that's a really good way. Of your financial institution allows you to have more than one checking. You can have multiple checking accounts and then rename them on your app for each category. So then if you have the checking account that your debit card is connected to, you go to the grocery store. Okay, how much is in my grocery checking? All right, so that means I got this much to spend on groceries. Then when you get to the counter, transfer it from groceries to your debit card checking, then swipe it. And that way you don't have to worry about cash, and you can also separate it still.
Yep.
And I honestly, and thank you for that, Robert, but you might also get your grocery list first before going to the store. Eat before you get there so you don't get random snacks and unnecessary things that are not, if it's not on the list, you want to stick to it. But I didn't transfer my money before going to the store, and for some reason when I got to Sam's, my app wouldn't work, so I couldn't pay for my stuff. So make sure you have money in there according to your budget.
Yep. Awesome. You are very welcome, Bernadette. Glad we could help. So I know we're a little bit over, but I want to give Veronica a chance to talk about the long-term benefits, and then we'll wrap up. So bringing it back to outside of like goal achievement, any long-term benefits you've experienced or had a client experience from budgeting?
So I'm going to share my personal experience.
Yeah.
I have so many client stories, that's for another day. But my personal experience that was long-term, that kind of hit like the generation in my family, was that growing up, unfortunately, the only time I heard about money was when my parents didn't have enough for the rent, which as a child, it creates trauma with money. You have anxiety, like, are we going to get kicked out? Are we going to this and that? Some things that a child actually does not need mentally. So when I was able to make a budget and become, good with my money, it unlocked actually freedom, because my parents couldn't sleep at night. I now can sleep at night. I don't have the anxiety. And now when it comes to my son, he's never even heard me about missing a rent payment. So that's one thing that long-term, it benefited me. Not just me, but now it's benefiting my son. And obviously I'm going to show him how to manage money. So one day my grandchildren don't have to worry about, are we going to get kicked out and have anxiety at such a young age.
Yep.
So
Healing
that's
that
the long-term for me.
trauma. That's deep and beautiful. One last thing I just want to end us on, and I hope we have each individually made this clear, but I know budgeting can feel really restrictive. It can feel like punishment, but it's really not meant to be that. And if it feels like that, we can help you do it better. It should actually be very freeing. Experience that freedom. It should give you a lot of peace of mind, help heal that anxiety and that fear around money. So if you are curious, if you're struggling with budgeting, if it feels like punishment and restriction to you, please reach out to Prosperity Connection. We have fabulous coaches like Veronica who can help you figure out how to make a budget work for you, work within your lifestyle, honor your values, honor your goals. So anyways, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it. This was our last Facebook Live for the summer, so we hope you've enjoyed this series. As I mentioned earlier, they've been a huge success. Thank you to everyone that's joined us. So like I said earlier, our traditional financial education classes are about to start again. So starting Thursday, September 7th, we'll be back with Creating Your Spending Plan, where we talk about the process. We've got a class on credit, a class on credit cards, and we even have a class on home buying basics, because we know that's a really common goal. So if you're interested in any of those, go check out our website, prosperityconnection.org. There's a little get started button up in the corner, and you can sign up for any of those classes. We may surprise y'all and be back for a live sometime later this year, but for now, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank you.